I've owned 11 cars at the age of 18, and I'm going to explain to you exactly how I was able to do that. Hey guys, my name is Logan, or Cream Tag, and today I'm going to be going over all the cars I've owned and how I was able to own them, and how it's possible for you to be able to do the same thing too. Cars are not cheap. I'm not saying they are, and they're not easy to come by when you have a particular taste or a particular style of car that you like. So I know the struggle, and I know how difficult it can be to find your obtainable dream car and find a car that you really want to be able to enjoy. You want to find a car that you want to be able to work on and something you can put your time and effort into. So I bought my first car when I was 15 years old. It was a 2000 Honda Civic SI. Now I'm in Canada, so the SI here is the equivalent to the American EX. So it had a D16 Y8. This car was by no means fast. This car was by no means fancy, but it was my first car, and it was a really good first car. Now, I bought this car for $750. Now, I don't expect you to be able to replicate that again today, but I'll explain to you some other ways that you could potentially work your way up and get to a better or more obtainable car soon. So I bought this car for $750. All in all, I was probably $2,000 into it by the time it was no longer in my possession anymore. I did not sell the car. It was actually stolen, and it was never recovered. So it's still out there somewhere. No idea where it is or what happened to it, but I came home from the ski hill one day and it was gone. This car, what all was wrong with it? It needed brakes. I think it needed bearings. It needed a bunch of little things. It leaked out everywhere. I had to replace the oil pan gasket, valve cover gasket. I had to replace the intake. A bunch of different little odds and ends here and there, you know. It ran and drove perfectly fine when I bought it, but it had a lot of basic maintenance that it needed. Now, cosmetically or performance-wise, I never actually did any modifications to this car because I didn't own it long enough. I'd actually bought coilovers for it, and I had a K-tuned short throw shifter that was going to be going in it, but I didn't have the time to put it in before it got stolen. And those parts that I had ended up going into the Cream Integra, which I'll talk about shortly. And after that car was crashed and that whole incident happened, then now those parts are in the GSR. So I still have them. Bought for my very first car, and they're in my current project car today. So after that car was stolen, it was a very good car, but it meant that I ended up buying the Cream Integra, which if you follow me, you'll know the car. If you don't follow me, I'm gonna ask you, go hit that subscribe button, turn on the post notification bell. It's free, and you can always change your mind later, and it really helps with the channel, so subscribe if you haven't already. I bought the Cream Integra. I paid $1,300 for it, and it was in decent shape for what it was. It had rust. There was more rust on it than I knew about at the time, but there was rust. It ran and it drove, and it was really cool, and I was really, really excited about it because this car was much cooler than my Civic that I had. This car was absolutely bond stock, other than an aftermarket, cheap, no-name brand steering wheel that I still have today. And I spent a lot of time on that car. 2 days after buying it, I lowered it with the coilovers I had bought for my Civic. Those cars are kind of cross-compatible, so I was able to use them on the new car. Yeah, I put my shifter in it, I put the coilovers on it. That's how it was for a little while. You know, slowly over time, I did better and better things to it. You know, I maybe lowered it more, I put wheels on it, got new headlights, and eventually I did what I was always meaning to do, and I painted the car. That's right, I sanded the whole car down. I got rid of every little bit of Bondo on the car, and trust me, there was a lot. I did my best to try and fix it with the abilities I had. And yeah, I painted the car. I was very excited about it. Still really happy that I did it. It was a blast. It was a really fun experience. A lot of where I was able to get money from this came from working part-time. My first car I'd actually bought just saving up Christmases, birthdays over time, $750. Sounds like a lot, but it's really not that much, and that's what I was able to afford it. And yeah, just working part-time, I was able to buy these cars. Now, luckily they're cheap. Right? They're not crazy expensive. My first one was $750. The Cream Integra was $1,300, and parts are also cheap. So with, you know, being able to get my hands dirty, like pulling parts at the junkyard, you know, even just working and saving up money to be able to put money into my car, it slowly progressed over time. Now, while I had the Cream Integra, now this was before I had painted it, I had the opportunity to buy a blown motor E36 compact. So it's basically a hatchback E36. Not very common, but I think they're cool. A lot of people hate them because they're kind of a weird looking car, but I think they're neat. And I bought it for $500. I got that $500 because I sold my old mountain bike I didn't use anymore. I bought it like 4 years prior. I'd paid $300 for it. Again, you know, I was a kid at the time, just money I'd saved up, Christmases, birthdays, that sort of thing. Sold it for $500, bought the blown up car for $500. I ended up not doing anything with it. I never found a motor, so I ended up selling the car for $1,000. Wasn't really intentional, but I had another project pop up, a new car to possibly buy, and I jumped at the possibility. And so I sold this BMW for $1,000, paid $500 for it, made $500 profit, good in my books. Now, the reason why I had to sell this car was because I had the opportunity to buy an EM1. It was a 1999 Honda Civic SI-R, which in the States is the SI. Had a B16 A2, I believe. It was non-running. Had sat for 8+ years, but there was minimal to no rust. I mean, $1,000 for an EM1 is a really, really good deal. Everything was there. Basically, long story short, what had happened is the timing belt had grabbed a loose bolt, shot it through the valve cover, but the timing belt didn't break, didn't skip a tooth in the timing. I just pulled the timing belt off, put a new one on, changed a couple of fluids, and it started right up. Now this car was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it. It was a really, really great daily driver while I, worked on the Cream Integra, and I sold it. I sold it because I realized that what I had paid for it versus what it was worth at the time of selling it, I could make a pretty good profit on it, and I could take that profit money and I could put that into the Cream Integra and basically progress the build that I really like even more. Now I kind of sold it, kind of traded it. I traded it for a 1990 Honda Civic EF hatchback. That car was a blast. It was so much fun. The guy also gave me $800 on top of it, and the sweet little bit about this car was that it had a V18 swap in it, which is an engine out of an Integra. I now had this car that was already kind of built. It was in really good shape. I had $800 in cash on top that I was able to put into the Cream Integra. So yeah, that was a blast. It was a lot of fun, and I kind of kept going with that. I drove that car for a little while, and it was really fun. But it did have an occasional problem where it just wouldn't start. I'm pretty sure it probably just had some bad wiring somewhere, but had a battery relocation, and with all the swap stuff going on and everything being aftermarket, it was really hard to figure out where exactly it was coming from. So I ended up trading that car. I ended up trading it for a 1986 Toyota Supra. It was a Mark II Toyota Supra. I really enjoyed it, and I ended up actually repainting the whole front end of the car because there was a lot of weird paint hole rust spots on the hood, from rock chips, that sort of thing. So I ended up repainting the whole front clip, I repainted the hood, and I repainted the A-pillars and the whole roof. I realized pretty quickly that I wasn't going to be keeping the car because it was really rusty, and I needed a daily driver. I bought this car in the winter. I was winter driving a 1986 Toyota Supra. I ended up selling for $4,500. Not bad. Not bad, seeing as I traded it for a car that I made an $800 profit off. Now, after I sold the car, I realized that, yeah, I do want a winter daily because I don't really want to be driving my Integra in the snow because there is rust and I want to get rid of that. And at the same time, I wanted to be able to have a winter daily so that I could start sanding down and prepping the Cream Integra for paint. I ended up buying a 1993 Toyota Celica. I bought that car for $2,800 and I ended up selling it for $6,500. The reason why I was able to sell it for so much is that the market just kind of exploded for those cars. I guess in the winter, no one was really buying these cars, even though they make really, really good winter cars. I enjoyed that car. I drove it for a couple of months, and then I ended up selling it. I kind of wanted to get something all-wheel drive. That's when I had bought my, I guess either a 98 or a 99 Subaru Legacy B4. I paid $5,800 for this car. Don't really think that that was worthwhile. I think that I overpaid for that car. It was a really, really fun car. It was all-wheel drive, it was twin turbo, it was right-hand drive. It wasn't really a reliable car. There was a couple of times where it had let me down. I decided, after it kind of let me down a couple of times, I decided it was time to sell it and buy something that I could actually really use as a good, reliable daily driver. And that's why I traded it for probably the ugliest RSX I've ever seen. Definitely lost on this one. I traded it for a 2003 RSX. Absolute base model. It still had AC and it still drove great, so why not? Well, I own the Cream Integra and the RSX. I went on a road trip, and I'm sure you guys have probably seen the road trip I went on. If you haven't, go check it out. I did a whole video series on it. I'll link the first episode here in the video. It was a ton of fun. I drove the car 6,500 kilometers. We drove the entire West Coast highway. On the way home, when we were in Montana, 9 hours from home, we hit a deal. The Cream Integra was wrecked. It wasn't drivable at the time. Once we got the car back home, decided that because of all the rust that was going to come back eventually, I want to take the insurance payout, and I managed to find a GSR Integra for ridiculously cheap. I paid $4,200 for this car, so that's kind of how the GSR came into my possession, and I've been working on the GSR since I got it. There's been a lot of things I've already done to it, and lots more to come. I've actually got parts sitting right here on my desk for the car. I still had the RSX at this time, and I was daily driving the RSX. Now, I had seen on Marketplace a while ago, actually before I bought the GSR, one of the cars I was considering buying was a 2000 Acura Integra GS. Basically what I ended up doing is I sold my car to my sister for a really good price. I was actually at the time looking at buying a Civic, same thing as my first car, because another good reliable daily. That car, the Integra I was looking before, I realized that the price had been lowered, and I was like, hey, maybe I could get this car. And I bought the Integra, which is now my daily, and there's things here and there that needed to be done, but everything's been done. That's kind of where I am now, and I think part of why I was able to get, I don't really want to call it luck, I think it's partly luck, but also partly patience. How I was able to afford these cars realistically was patience. I knew what I wanted. Every single car I bought it because I was looking for it. Other than the Supra, that was kind of a bit more of an impulse buy. At every point, I wasn't in a rush to buy a new car. I was willing to drive a long distance. The GSR I bought was in Kamloops. I had to fly down there, and I think it was about a 7-hour drive back home. The GS Integra I have right now was a 3-hour drive away. I've done a lot of 3-hour drives to buy cars. And basically just being willing to drive distances, go to places where other people probably aren't willing to go, is how you're able to get these cars for a good deal. The other thing is just negotiating, learning what to look for in a car, learning what makes it worth more or less money. Yeah, I think the biggest thing when it comes to how I was able to afford all these cars was just having the patience and knowing exactly what I was looking for. I would look every single day on Marketplace, learn market values, be patient, and eventually something will pop up. So yeah, at the end of the day, be patient, know what you want to buy, maybe look for something that's out of the way, look for something that has been listed for a while, and don't be afraid to say no if it's not the right car. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure to hit the subscribe button, turn on the post notification, like, and comment, and let me know in the comment section what kind of videos you want to see in the future. I'll see you next time. Peace.